do tonight. I set a goal of 100 roses tonight. So, every like, every share, every comment, and every gift helps push the podcast out there. So let me go ahead. I'm going to do the countdown, and then we're going to get started. Hey, Nicole. All right. Let me go ahead and make this screen bigger, and I'll check out comments in a moment. So, my name is Tina Durbin. I am the podcast host for Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard. This is a podcast for the marginalized, the silenced, and the abused. And tonight I have my guest, and I'm going to say dear friend now. We've never met in real. I say that in real life, but man, we have met for real for a few times via this podcast and in Clubhouse. So, I just want to say welcome to LaKeisha Walker. When I'm in the windy city of Chicago, I'm tracking you down for probably
Yes.
more than a cup of coffee. Um, but I want to bring you on because I know it is Human Sex Trafficking Awareness Month. And I know you have your own story to tell. Hey, Melanin Galore. I'm not sure I know your name, but thank you for missing me from Clubhouse. So, Lakeisha, tell us as briefly as you can because we've met you before. Okay, we've met you before, and we know we love you, and we know
I
that
love
we know
you.
a little bit of your story. But can you briefly tell us your story, and then we want to get into just some other information. And thank you guys for joining me on TikTok as well. So go ahead, Lakeisha.
Thank you, Tina. I love you so much. And thanks to all the supporters out there. Um, I'm just going to briefly cover it. My story is that since birth, I pretty much was thrown into everything that you can imagine that could possibly happen to cause me to be another statistic, right? So, mom and dad on drugs. I was thrown off a building at 2 years old. I ended up in DCFS. From there, I continued to be molested. Um, then I was raped by 12. And then by 16, I ended up in a very abusive relationship. At 17, I met a human sex trafficker. And I didn't know that he was a Romeo pimp. And he tricked me into a strip club. And from there, I was forcefully sold actually, and locked up in a house for about 6 years, where I continued to be beat. I was raped daily. I was sold to dozens of strange men. Um,
Hmm.
and I was manipulated in every sense of the word. I wasn't fed. Sometimes he would choose not to feed me. And God brought me out of all of that. And after I got out of it, I struggled so bad in my mind, and I ended up trying to commit suicide 3 times as a result of me not being able to share what I had been through or get any help for it. And it wasn't until then that I started going to like therapy and just really taking everything like much more serious, because I was on a journey to find out and discover, who am I? Why am I constantly bouncing back from this? And I feel like in that moment, God revealed to me that it was because He was going to use me to help people who feel like I felt in all the pain.
And I always start the podcast with that infamous loaded question.
Yeah.
Tell us who you are, where you've been, and where you're going. And I think that for many of us who have experienced abuse, there is that moment when you realize that the abuse is a present moment. But when you start doing the work, you start unpacking the onion backwards and you realize that so many layers of your onion led you to exactly where you are. And I say this often, while we are never to blame for the abuse, the patterns we have laid before ourselves were laid before we laid them. Like we don't even know what we don't know yet, and yet we're just walking along, and all of a sudden there's like this epiphany or a light bulb or whatever you want to call it, God's voice. Someone says something, you read something, and you go, "Oh my God!" And then it all makes sense. But it doesn't make sense for the abuse. It just makes sense for the lack of respect you expected for yourself up until those moments. You start to realize the boundaries you never set, the friendships you had that were not worthy of the time and energy and the effort, the superficiality of things. And then you realize, for those of us who have faith, and I know many people have a faith different from mine or
Mhm.
from LaKeisha's or even from another person that we're not talking about. But at some point, if you believe in a higher power, whatever its name might be, the universe, the energy, God, Allah, whatever, that there's a purpose greater than something you've endured. And that's when you realize I didn't go through all this shit for nothing. I mean, really, you start to realize there is no way I'm going to let this stop with me. I have to share who I am, where I've been, and where I'm going because somebody else needs that path and they can't see it right now. And I think that's the point that we both got to. Um, and so I know for you, LaKeisha, you started an organization. So
Yes.
talk about that.
Well, I started an organization actually in the middle of the pandemic, um, to help survivors, who are in it now, who are looking for a way out, just looking to be almost rescued or looking for someone who can like guide them in the right direction, as to what do I do now. Like now I made the decision that I cannot live like this any longer. I just cannot be in this any longer. And so we really have wraparound services for the survivor who is actually in it, for after you get out of it, and even if you're contemplating going in it, or for the youth who may not even know anything about it, we want to spread awareness. So that's pretty much what all of our services surround. So really quick, I definitely want to mention our newest sponsor, which is UIC Community Center, has housed us. So that's something I'm very excited about because we didn't have anywhere to be,
Oh
um,
my
for
god.
almost 4 years.
Oh
Yeah,
my
like
gosh.
we're very excited about it because we didn't have anywhere really to be. We were like hosting our community events at a local church, which I love them as well. They had partnered with us and they were allowing us to use their church, and that is First Church right here in Chicago. And but we didn't have anywhere to like be on a regular basis. So now we have somewhere to be. Very excited about that. It opens so many opportunities for us to be able to create the programs. Our most recent program was an Arthur program. So if you're a survivor who's listening, wanting to become an Arthur, wanting to feel heard, what I've noticed is that most of the programs that we create or that I've come up with and present to my board um, are those that are dear to my heart. So I was literally sitting there, and I had already written 2 books, right? But I was sitting there and I was thinking, wow, after I became an author, after I do all these speaking engagements and I do so many things, like, right, I still sometimes struggle with not feeling heard. I still struggle with people not getting it and people not understanding that even though I'm a founder of an organization, it's still a survivor led organization. So, by me being a survivor, um, I still kind of, you know, I don't want to say struggle because I'm trying to watch the way I say it,
I was
but
gonna
I would
say
say that I'm
people
still making
see
it.
you. I was gonna say
Yeah.
people see you as a survivor, but do they also see you as a warrior, or do we still? We don't really want to know. Like,
Well,
don't you
I
feel
think
like sometimes
I
people still
believe
don't
that.
really want to know what you've been through? Like,
Right. I believe that outside of like you, who's been absolutely amazing with supporting me every single year and allowing me to speak, you and some others that support us. But I honestly believe that it's that they just don't want to know. They're not used to seeing a founder who is so open about what she's been through and in the midst of me still helping others. I'm just very open and down to earth about everything I've been through because I believe that how can we help anybody if we're not able to be honest? If
right,
I'm not going to tell the truth about it, I don't see how I can really be of great help. So I'm
right.
doing something that probably has never been done, but you can't see if something will work if you're afraid to do it. So here I am.
Well, and when you, I do think you come to that point where just as much as you don't own the abuse and you know you, but yet you know somehow your past played into your present, okay, and you're trying to figure that out. It's the same thing when you finally say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to be as public as I want to be. And
Yes.
it's not on me to help you figure out why me being public bothers you. That's on you
Yes.
to figure out why me being public bothers you. But that's again another nugget of when you decide to really put it out there, you realize there's still a lot of judgment, good and
Oh
bad,
yes. Oh
about
yes.
why it is you're putting it out there. And because people say, well, you're putting it out there because you want attention. Ugh, if I could get attention any other way than telling my story about
Yes.
my abuse, I'd figure it out.
And
Um,
that's the thing,
mm,
right? So with we started the program like for Arthur. So I want every survivor to be able to be heard. And since I have, that's just another one of my gifts. I figured out how to become published. I said, hey, we'll publish you. All you have to
amen.
do is submit your material to us, and
Love
we
it.
won't change a thing. However they submit it, we're gonna publish that. So that's what we are currently what we've been currently doing. But then we're helping survivors in many other ways. As I said, I mean, just yesterday, a survivor had actually contacted me, and we've had to restructure the way we help. So I can't be as open as I was maybe when I started out about who we're helping because their lives are on the line and nobody wants their identity exposed. And I understand that. And I am being a voice so that they could, I'm pretty much starting a Me Too movement, which is whenever you do feel comfortable enough, it's okay to speak out. Hey, I'll take the
Right,
lashes first. I'll take like the people talking about me first or whatever if it'll give another survivor the courage to come
right.
forward and
Well,
speak up.
I mentioned to you, I have a couple of things on my mind because, growing up, I'll be 60 in June. And, you know, we always heard about the girls of the night or the oldest profession in the book. It was even in the Bible. And, talking about um, what we talked about a little bit before we went live, houses of ill repute. And we knew that it was predominantly women, who were engaging in sexual activities for money. But I don't think that we often went beyond what they were doing and what we were judging them for. And even when we like did these what were called sting operations, and we had a police officer go undercover and pretend to do this and that, then we would hear that the guy was being trapped because he didn't know the police officer wasn't really a prostitute, or whatever. And it seems like, and some of it is in our society, we come from a patriarchal culture, so it always seems like the women are getting blamed for something while the men are partaking quite freely but are not being as persecuted for it. But how did we get to this point, LaKeisha? At what point did this table turn and we went from prostitution and walking the streets, and of course then we have the opposite side of women who control and say, well, I'm a call girl or I'm an escort. How did we get from those terms to human sex trafficking? When did that happen?
Well, first, let me just say, happy Human Trafficking Awareness Month. I know I should be happy, but this is an emotional month for me. But I am wearing my blue to support. Um, I don't know who made this term human trafficking, but I'm pretty sure that they didn't gather a team of survivors to come up with it. Because if you say human trafficking on the streets, most of those girls that's actually out here in it, they have no idea what you're talking about. That's number one. The second thing is, in theory, I think it's just like the boy who cried wolf, right? So I think what happened is, um, they were throwing around so many different things, and I'm going to get to the other part in a second, but
That's take your time.
they were throwing around so many different things, when it came to like prostitution, human trafficking, just whatever it was, that it confuses communities, right? So communities are looking at it as all one thing, and they're thinking that somebody who's maybe trapped in human trafficking is actually a prostitute, or they're thinking that somebody who's a prostitute is actually a madam. I'm just giving examples, right? So
Yeah, it's
what
all
is
mixed up
happening is
together now.
they are afraid. They don't want to deal with none of it. They don't even want to find out what the differences are or what it is. It's like, I am afraid. This is a dark life that I want nothing with. I've had issues with people even sharing it. Um, and I had to literally go live to say, hey, you know, it doesn't hurt to share. Like, it's not like you saying that you did anything. I'm the one that's selling my story, or I'm the one that's spreading the awareness. And people did begin to like support more. So I appreciate that. The other thing that I wanted to address is, you mentioned something about like with the madams and the this and the that. The other thing is, communities don't realize that we all are victimized in one way or another. It really doesn't matter. We could argue all day or debate all day about the difference between a prostitute, a madam, a human sex trafficking survivor. But at the end of the day, they all are victimized, because you got to think how low of a place you must be in your mind to even feel like, well, the only thing that I could really do is just get this money and get this money fast by selling my body. And if I feel like if they realized how valuable their bodies were,
Mhm.
um, then they wouldn't make that choice. And this is not me coming for anybody. I love my sisters. Like, um, I support all of them. But what I'm saying is that for you to sit and make that choice, for you to even come up with that choice, there has to be some other things going on, whether it's the economy, whether it's a
Yeah.
lack of love or self-esteem. There is
Mhm.
something going on where you really have been done an injustice, community wise, government wise, support wise, for you to feel like this is my only means of making, a living. So either way, I have a heart for everybody. I don't care if they're doing it because they just think that that's what it is to do, if they trapped doing it, if they being forced. I just want to help whoever wants to help. I would help them.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, whether it is by choice,
Right.
at times that choice is still not conscious because that choice has been groomed by your past, your
Yep.
present, your future,
Yep.
the people you've come in contact with. Because, I mean, I know that I was on a jury one time and the guy had made so many bad choices. And so at some point you want to say, well, it's on him. But I thought about when he came to the fork in the road and had the choice to make. It's hard to make a good choice when you don't even fathom what's down the other road. Like everything in your life has groomed you to go down the left path. You can't even see what's down the right.
Yeah, and then you got to think like, and this is, I've came from so many dark circumstances in life. So if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you don't
Mhm.
see any other way, but then people keep telling you how cute you are or whatever, then you might see that as an only option. Um, so I understand it. I empathize with it, and I still want to help those people too, because I still feel like as a community, I say again, I feel like they've been done an injustice because why do they feel like it's no other means of
Right, because it's not an excuse.
survival?
I mean, you're not making, you're not saying you're making this choice because you're stupid or because you're this or because you're that. You're
Right,
making this choice because you know no other way. And
right,
knowing no other way still does not give you full responsibility. Why is it that you don't know
exactly.
the way that's any different? And that's all of the circumstances behind you have groomed you to this moment. And when this moment comes, you make the only choice you know how. It's like when you're
Yep,
standing in the store and you have no money. Do you steal the bread? Do you rob the guy next to you? Or do you actually say, I don't have any bread. Could I have a loaf? I mean, some people don't know how to ask for help. Some people steal
right.
the bread. Some people run with the
Yep.
bread. Some people shoot someone else for the bread. So, you know, we have to think about that. That's where,
And then I had like extremely low self-esteem, so I can easily understand how these women, teens, LGBTQ plus communities feel. Easy. I can easily understand the rejection and the abandonment, just all of the feelings that come into play when they choose to be like, I don't even care. I'm about to just go ahead and I'm gonna sell myself, not realizing that you can get killed out here. Like it's not a game whether you have a trafficker like forcing you or not. Even if there's no, like they call those renegades. I was in a room the other day with my sister, Lady Star. I love Lady Star so much. Yes. And she had someone, Jessica. I believe in paying my sister's homage on the things that I learned. So um, she mentioned renegade, right? So I knew what that term, I mean, I knew what she meant by that because I came from the lifestyle and everything, but I had never heard that term used. So this is a new term to describe somebody who wants to work on their own. Um, and they don't have necessarily a pimp or a trafficker forcing them to do so. Um, so you got, the people that choose to do this life, but even with them, I still want to warn them, and I would like to just caution them and beg them, almost plead with them to please um, question that choice. Because I'm telling you, you got to watch your back. It's from the traffickers. You got to watch them from the
so
tricks. You got to
Lakeisha,
watch them from
when you look
other
back,
people.
when you look back, even though there were lots of things that pushed you, and then there were ultimately some circumstances that led you further in that were not of your doing, and choices made all along the way that were groomed. What would you say the impact has been, other than the positive things with Honorable Women Inc.?
Okay.
But when you first came out of the lifestyle or the whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
um, what things did you realize you had? given up? Or what things did you realize were now harder? Or
I, I feel
your
like,
self
see, you,
esteem? What, I mean, what?
I love your interviews because you ask me the right questions. You know how to get it out of me. um, yes, I feel like one of the things that was extremely harder, and even to this day, is that I felt like I was robbed. I was not only robbed of my virtue, as just being a valuable woman who was treated like I had no value at all, but I was also robbed of um, almost like I don't my name in a sense. Like I was robbed of not my name, but I was robbed of my reputation um, because that kicked it off to me being looked at as a prostitute, and that is something that no matter what, I mean, we could give it a pretty name, human trafficking. She was trapped. That was different. It doesn't matter. There are still people who will look at me as she used to be a prostitute. So that anger though has truly made me an alchemist. The anger from everything I went through has truly made me enraged enough to say, all right, well, if I can't control, you know, how they thinking, I'm gonna control you. I can still control my narrative. I can still control the way it ends. So
Absolutely.
um they can call me all that, but they have to add Arthur to that name. They're gonna have to add motivational speaker to that name.
Right,
I mean, the list
absolutely.
could go on and on
Right.
what they have to add to it. So and I hope that I inspire other survivors to do the same. You don't have to just wallow in that shame. I went
Right.
through a lot of shame, a lot of feeling bad for a very, very long time. And still am coming through that, to be honest. I'm still literally
Well, I
moving.
know you're still, I mean, you share openly, you're still in counseling. It's an
Yeah,
ongoing healing journey. And I do, I mean, I'm the same way. As much as I have grown and learned and changed, I realize that there's the key word. I changed. And I don't want that change to make me an embittered person. And I think it would be easy to tell the world F you, and keep everyone at arm's length. And even though I can do that easily, I have to make a conscious decision to choose people carefully, and realize that not all people are like me, think like me, that can be trusted like me. Um, but what does that look like in my life? I have, like I said, I have to be very careful. My energy is very important, because when you've been through something like we've been through, um, your energy can be drained quickly.
yep,
um you
yes,
because you're so used to giving it away, socially, intellectually, financially, um and let's face it, women too, we give it away sexually, whether it is in LaKeisha's world or just in a regular world, we give it away. We give lots of things away, easily, and sometimes we don't ask for anything in return. And it has taken me a long time to realize it's okay for me to ask for something in return.
yeah,
um, and
absolutely.
I struggle because it's like, well, I want to do for you, but you don't have to do anything for me.
And see,
Even compliments are hard.
oh,
I just listen to them, and sometimes I don't. I mean, I say thank you, but it's like, don't say that. I'm just
I
me.
think that's totally normal. I mean, even I was in a meeting room the other day and someone said, "Why I didn't know you was an Arthur. Why didn't you say that?" And I said, "Because it's not the first thing I say. The first thing I usually say is I'm a survivor." So I totally understand not necessarily wanting that like pat on the back for it because
Right.
this don't feel
Right.
this don't feel that amazing to me, but I must do it. I'm gonna keep doing it because I need to help survivors. Period. Like that's the only way I can make sense of my life. But it don't
Yeah.
feel that sparkly to me. So
Yeah. That's it. Well, now tell us about the article. So, Lakeisha shared an article with me, and I did
okay.
read it, but I want you to tell us who are listening what that article is about, and I will share it out after you have a chance to kind of set it up for us a little bit.
Okay. So I wrote an article, and this was in a process of me also creating the idea of wanting to help survivors, like also write and get published, become publishers. So that was me. Really, that was all my feeling. And I put my heart out into this article on how I feel human trafficking has progressed or reclined within the time that I started Honorable Women Inc. So we are currently working on a research because I just want to know. We've helped so many different survivors, like everywhere, right? And one of our newest kinds of survivors has been immigrants. So I've grown a heart, more of a heart for immigrants because I didn't realize what they go through, not even being able to speak the language, not even being from over here, not even knowing how to get adequate medical care and things
I'll
like
be
that.
honest, Lakeisha, that was my first experience with human sex trafficking. Is I dated a guy from Mexico for a little while, and he worked on a farm, and he told me that on a particular day of the week, a van was brought in with several women on it, and the women were there to service the farm workers. And the van was paid for by the owner of the farm.
Wow. So
And it blew me away. And I said to him, I said, so like how many women? And he said, three or four. And I said, and like, how many men? Like, what, how long does the van, I mean, I had a million questions. And he's like, the van stays for a couple of days, and there's probably, 50 men. And I'm like, oh, I'm
yeah,
just like, I'm like, I don't even really want to know this. I don't even really want to think about this. But it was like, it was kind of at the beginning when a lot of farms were bringing in um, the immigrant worker. And then to find out that they were bringing in immigrant women to service them, it just, I, that was my first
yeah.
encounter. My
So
first, my first
it's
knowledge.
hard. It really is heartbreaking, and where some would think, hey, just worry about your own kind. Sorry, I've never had that type of heart. I care about humans. I'm a humanitarian. So with that being said, me seeing it through their eyes has made a huge difference. Initially, I started out with my own story and I had a heart for like women and teens. And from there, I had a heart for LGBTQ plus because I have plenty of friends who are gay or all of that, the whole nine. So I knew what they were going through. So I had a heart for them. And then, of course, children and now immigrants. So we're doing a study to see how human trafficking affects each individual group, right? Each
Mm,
individual group. It really, people don't realize they just put everything in one category, but it's not true. It looks
that's true.
different depending on who is experiencing it. And there's always something new to learn. And I think that it's important to be able to know how to properly help whoever it is that you're helping. Because if I were to go to an immigrant to help an immigrant, I can't talk to them like I just talked to my African American sister or brother who's in it because the language might be a little bit different. Or maybe I need to get a translator, even. Or if they do speak the language, I know I worked with one that was so frightened. I had to calm them down before I could even begin to unravel like what was
Well,
happening.
And what plays into it also is, again, not just the language, not just the color of your skin, but the culture
The
that you have
culture.
come from.
Yes.
Culturally, you know, there are those groups of people, for whatever reason, that don't talk about incest, don't talk
Yes.
about rape, don't talk about sex abuse, and yet it is very common. And
Yeah.
so I know that there was a guy at my at the university where I taught for a while, and he said that immigrants often had stories of torture from their own communities, from their own country, their home place. But until they learned a second language, they had no words to describe it to anyone here. So bring someone from Africa who doesn't speak English, someone from Nigeria or someone from Russia, and
Yeah.
bring them to the United States, and they have no English words to explain to someone here what has happened to them in their home country. And so the language of torture doesn't exist sometimes until you've learned a second language. And then you share it and find your voice. I never thought about that either. That's huge. So for someone
It
who
is.
comes from a culture where they don't share these things openly, they would have no way to share.
Exactly.
No.
And then how do you really know how to help them? And one of the things that made me discover this as well is that a lot of people kept asking me, like, I host like seminars, and we have one coming up on the 27th, but a lot of people would ask, what do we do? Like, people that did want to help, they didn't know how to help, and how can we become involved. And I just want to make sure that I cross every T and dot every I, and make sure that I know how to properly tell them how to help each each community, pretty much each community, because
Right.
it is different, and we all have to become helpers in a human trafficking safe zone if we really want to uncover this, because otherwise people are too afraid to tell. I just looked on something on the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and I could throw numbers around all day. I always say it's between 14 and 16,000 in Chicago alone. Yes, that may be true. They have another one, 50,000, that's going around, and that's just like basically um, in multiple, places from the human trafficking hotline. But what they are really saying, I read another article recently where they were really saying is that they really don't know the numbers anymore. They're losing count of the numbers, and they're trying to gain, like, be able to keep track of the numbers, because either people are not calling in as much, or the ones who are calling in, they're trying to decipher what form of trafficking it is, because these stories are going from, like you said, like the madam situation to the renegade to the
Do you
labor,
think that,
everything.
like so many, I mean, and this is terrible to say, but do you think, I guess I'm thinking two things. Do you think in some ways the people it impacts are people no one really cares about?
Oh, definitely. I almost jumped out my
I
absolutely,
mean,
that is it.
we don't
But it's
care about people in poverty. We don't always care about
those
people of
are
color. We don't care about people from another country. They're so far removed from us. Okay,
those
that's one
are
thing. And
largest.
then the second thing is, it's almost like we're in that 24 news cycle. Today it's hot news, and tomorrow it's gone. And
Yes.
so now we've used this term, human sex trafficking, for a while now,
Mhm.
and now it's become like, oh yeah, we've heard about that before, and they flip the channel before they even hear anything new or anything that gets added on, or any kind of nuance. I mean, I've heard that there are even some places on TikTok that there are some human sex trafficking aspects of TikTok, um, where there are usually women being forced to like dance or do all these things, and they're not, I mean, people send gifts and people are watching and people are engaging and interacting, and they're not even realizing that it's just another form of the same game. It's just modernized.
Absolutely. The internet is number one on my list for one of the hot, what I call it, hot spots.
Mhm.
Um, but they definitely, people don't really care. I mean, the same, just like what I have 16,000 followers on TikTok, but then I see people who are introducing human trafficking or pornography or just entertaining, like in this industry of entertainment. Um,
Mhm.
they're there are people watching those people, and there are people who do not care about the fact that I was harmed in it or the next person is harmed in it. So, unfortunately, that's the world we live in, um,
Right.
where it's definitely big shoes to fill. But I'm confident that obviously, if God allowed me to live through all of this, then He's gonna grace me to fill those shoes.
I was going to say, so what are some of your um, goals moving forward? Now, let me you think about that, okay, for a moment. Let me first of all thank you for tuning in on TikTok. For those of you who are used to seeing me craft and make folios and junk journals and things like that, I have another aspect of my life, and that is I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and this is my podcast, Love Over Coffee, because my goal is to truly engage with someone who doesn't look like me, think like me, doesn't believe like me, and certainly has not had the same lived experiences as me, and for them to be able to share their voice and share their story so that all of us can engage, interact, and find that common ground. And Love Over Coffee is that podcast. It's for the marginalized, the silenced, and the abused. So, welcome in. Thank you for staying. Please love and like and share. All of it supports the podcast and supports the survivors and their voices. Um, and I appreciate your being here. So LaKeisha, when you look forward, aside from being an author and a speaker, what are some of your goals for your own Honorable Women Inc. and maybe other aspirations you have?
Some of my goals is definitely to attract the ears of the government, governmental officials, so that they can realize that we need to make some changes if we don't want it to spread, and much more than just holding up, signs, like I said in my article. And I'm not attacking that because I've held up signs too. But what
Mm.
I'm saying, we're going to have to make some bold steps if we want to see changes in our communities pertaining to trafficking. And of course, my goal is always to help so many more survivors. I hope that survivors is coming from every which way for help, and that we are the ones who are able to help them. And if we're not able to help them at that time, that we can definitely point them in the right direction, or at least assist them with just getting out of where they are. So those are like my most recent goals. Also, um, I don't know who's located in Chicago, but if you're in Chicago, again, we are having a seminar, a human trafficking seminar. So that's why I was being a little bit careful what I was saying on this interview, because I have a lot more to share with that human trafficking seminar. That's going to be January 27th from 12 to 4 p.m. And if you would like to attend that, then you can message me, inbox me on any one of our platforms. Um, but I just want to give those survivors a voice and to help them get out, and not only get out, but to help them to live a comfortable lifestyle after, to help them to feel sustained after. Because I struggled bad with it. Like, I tell people, it was only about 4 years ago that I started to be happy. Could you imagine that?
Mhm.
Just started
All
something.
right. No, I I get it. I get it. And you know, sometimes I think back and I realize that it took a little longer for me because I think for some of us, and I know there are others out there maybe who bounce back sooner or who seem to move on faster. But for me, it just removed my rose colored glasses of the world. And I think in many ways it just simply, no other way to explain it, it simply broke my heart to find out that these people exist that just want to take advantage of other people. Whether it's a narcissist, whether it's an abuser, whether it's a Romeo pimp or whatever. It just, I guess it was the first time that it was so up close and personal. And not only was it up close and personal to me, but I met so many incredible women who also had it so up close and personal. And so it just really broke my heart that it happened to me, but then it really broke my heart to see that it has happened to so many others. And it's like you said earlier, I have to do something with it or else it would all be in vain. And I can't live with that as the bottom line. I have to do something. And I don't even always know what it is. And Lord knows I feel like I'm always trying on a daily basis to figure out what that is, what that ultimate purpose is. But I realize that whatever happened to me can't die with me.
Yes. And I personally would rather keep trying to do something than do nothing at all. I mean, because if you do nothing, then nothing can even begin to change.
Right.
And so it took me a whole lot of something to get to a place of being able to help
Hmm.
survivors. So I'm not gonna stop. I cannot stop trying something, like just doing something.
Right. Exactly. Well, Karen is saying, good to see you back, Miss Tina. Even though I have no teeth, Karen, but we won't talk about that. Appreciate your transparency, LaKeisha, and the efforts you are making. She also says, thank you for your strength to share your story. And thank you, Roderick Brown. Hello. And Takesha was on for a minute. We got 5 people. I see 5 people over here. I don't know what's going on TikTok over here. Um, so, give you another moment. Think about your final thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to do a shameless plug, which is hard for me, but I'm going to do it as shamelessly as possible. One of the things that has come out of Love Over Coffee is a subscription box series focused on self love, self care in an effort to heal trauma. Um, last the last box was about healing the inner child and what that looks like. Because sometimes the 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 inner child is the child that endured the trauma, and coped with it in the best way they knew how to at the time. And sometimes we look back and we realize that that inner child, while doing the best they could, didn't quite do it right. And that led us down the path of whatever it is we ended up in. And, we have to go back in time mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually and socially sometimes. And we have to go back and we have to grab the hand of that inner child and pull them forward. And basically, we have to tell that inner child, we love you and we're here to protect you. So while your inner child did all the work to endure the trauma, it is now your job as the adult to take the inner child's hand and bring them forward and do the rest to heal the trauma. And that is a hard doing. There's a lot of hard work in that. So that's one thing. The box is filled with activities and information and knowledge, um, and items that help encourage and promote, and lay a foundation for self care and self love. The next box, is about, so the last box was about the past, and the current box is about the present. And basically, the present is when you are a present to yourself, and being mindful of the moment you are living in and taking it all in, which is why I love coffee, because I can feel the warmth of the cup and it immediately takes me to the present moment. And I'm not lost in the past and I'm not lost in the future. I am just lost in the presence of that hot cup of coffee, to start the day. And then the next box after that will be about the future, and then we will just continue on. But that gives you an idea. So if the subscription box is something that you think you're interested in, whether it be for yourself or a gift for someone else, just reach out, message me, let me know. And I do also take um, donations for shipping costs. So the box is a labor of love, not a money maker. And so at this point, I do invest a lot of my own funds into it, but the shipping of it is sometimes where I falter. And so the shipping, especially since shipping went up again in January, I might add. If you want to cover a box for someone, please message me. Let me know. And of course, if you want to be a future podcast guest and share your story, all the links are on the tree in my bio. So, LaKeisha, one last time, I love you, girl. What are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. If you are a survivor who is listening, I want you to know that I love you. I've sat where you sit. I know what it's like to feel like you in this by yourself and you don't know what to do. Um, I'm here for you. In fact, it's a bunch of us that's here for you. And if you were to reach out to me, even now, I'll do everything I can within my power to help you. And it doesn't even matter. I'm not in Chicago. I got connects all over. So um, just reach out. Like, I'll talk to you. You don't need to be afraid, or feeling like maybe I'll judge you. I'm not a judgmental person at all. I tell people either I've done it, I thought about doing it, or I know somebody who did. So I'm just here to support and listen and just give you what I get.
And so, with that, I want to say again to the people on TikTok, thanks for the love and the likes and the shares. I really appreciate your being here. It's not always easy to hear about subjects that are not necessarily near and dear to you, and maybe you don't even know someone personally, but the internet is the way for us to engage more personally, from a distance, because so many of us never leave our home these days. It seems like everyone we know is in this little box right here called the phone. So, think about that. And, if you know someone or you yourself need something, message me, message LaKeisha. The 1-800 hotline for abuse is 799-8233. And LaKeisha, there's a number for human sex trafficking. Um, you can look that number up, or
I
LaKeisha
have
may
it.
have it.
It's 888-373-7888.
Okay, so There's help out there. It isn't always easy to ask for help, but the important thing is to see that you need help, and that can be a deeper hole to dig. But I promise you, the more you self love and self care, the more you will see that you're worth more than where you've been. And so, with that, this has been another episode of Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard. This is a podcast for the marginalized, the silenced, and the abused. And please, I challenge you this week, go enjoy a beverage of your choice with someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't think like you, who doesn't believe like you, and maybe doesn't have the same lived experiences as you. Because I promise you, not only will you be able to reflect, but you will be able to open up and engage maybe on a level that some of us haven't in a while because of the pandemic, or maybe for longer than that. So um, our next episode will be next week with Gina Medico. She has an update about a young woman who was arrested and put into a mental health facility for an evaluation, and basically kept there for 6 months or more. And we want to find out what's going on with that case and a couple of other updates from Gina. So, thank you, LaKeisha.
Thank
Um,
you.
I appreciate you greatly. Thanks for everyone on the Real Change page on Facebook, the 1111 group for survivors. We've also been live on YouTube. I did change the YouTube page to Love Over Coffee, so um, be sure to check us out in one of those places, and we'll see you back next week at 9 o'clock. So, thanks everybody. Let me say goodnight on the TikTok first. Okay. And then let me come over here and say goodbye over here. Good night, everybody.
Right.